Two women report UFO in Windsor. From the Burlington Free Press, April 17, 1981. What's bigger and wider than a 747 is V-shaped and full of lights, emits a steady hum that sounds like a train, and flies at about 4,000 feet. Linda Kingsbury, 33, and Lucy Slothauer, 29, would love to find out. They saw such an object for more than 5 minutes starting at 7:23 Wednesday night after they walked out of a grocery store. I noticed one star that seemed to be moving, and it kept coming right at us, said Mrs. Slothauer. She said the object flew right over their heads. It was an enormous craft, shaped like a triangle with a grid system in between, and lights outlining the structure, she said. The two women, both employees at Vermont Public Radio, reported the sightings to UFO centers around the country. They said one of the centers in Seattle, Washington, said there had been other reports of the sighting. Mrs. Slothauer said the craft was so quiet and subtle, she doubts it would have been seen by anyone driving down the road. The two women drew pictures of their sighting and said officials from the UFO Sighting Center planned to view them. UFO cruises Windsor. From Valley News, April 17, 1981. Walking through the parking lot of PNC grocery store, Linda Kingsbury and Lucy Slothauer looked to the dark, star-studded sky and saw something that looked like nothing they'd ever seen in their lives. Just a few blocks away, Jane Libby and her son were driving home when they too saw a strange, light-filled object moving slowly across the sky. Others saw the same mysterious lights over Windsor at about 7:30 Wednesday night, but nobody knows what it was, and there's a 1 in 10 chance they will never find out. Kingsbury, 33, business manager at Vermont Public Radio in Windsor, said she and Slothauer were on their way back to the radio station at 7:23 when Slothauer, assistant development director at VPR, noticed two bright lights far off in the distance. One of the lights, Kingsbury said, was very white, very bright and luminous, almost blue-white. The other light was dimmer and not nearly so big or as bright. Kingsbury said she thought the lights were too bright to be stars and not moving fast enough to be a satellite. As the slow-moving object came closer, she said it took on a triangular shape, and the women could see more lights on the underside of the apparently metallic craft. As it went over the top of us, this slow thing, there was a very heavy humming, droning sound, and yellow and bluish lights filling in underneath. Red lights on the sides of the object became visible as the craft approached. Kingsbury described her reaction to the sighting as far out. I mean, it wasn't like anything I'd ever seen in my lifetime, she said. It was like being part of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when Mothership comes over the mountain the first time. Kingsbury said the Vermont State Police referred them to the Plattsburgh Air Force Base in Plattsburgh, New York. The Air Force, in turn, turned their queries over to the UFO Sighting Center in Seattle, Washington. All they got there was a tape recording, said Kingsbury, so the women called the Center for UFO Studies in Evanston, Illinois, north of Chicago. The center has already begun investigation of the sighting, said Mark Rodeheer, a center director, Thursday. Another witness, Jane Libby of Windsor, was returning from the PNC store around 7:30 p.m. when her son, 14-year-old Andrew Briggs, pointed to the lit object in the sky. Libby, who was on State Street at the time, described the object as very large, with a bright light about like a star and 6 or 8 red lights on the side. Her son Andrew, an 8th grader at the Windsor Junior High School, said the object looked like a cylinder turning over very slow. UFOs reported in Richford area. From the Free Press, November 15, 1981. Several residents, including the town police chief, have reported seeing unidentified flying objects Thursday and Friday nights. Chief Homer Combs said he was on Golf Course Road about 7:30 p.m. Friday when he saw two bright orange lights to his west. One was about 3,000 feet off the ground, and the other was 1,000 feet above it, Combs said. One light would go out and the one below would go on. They'd go back and forth. Sometimes they'd both be on, and other times both be off, he said. Combs said he called Roland Smith of the town ambulance service on his portable radio, and he also saw the lights. He watched them for about 10 minutes, Combs said. The chief said one of the lights went out, then the other one made a sharp right turn and moved across the sky like you wouldn't believe. Combs, who is a pilot, said the lights could not have been on an airplane. Diane Gendron, who lives in Richford Village, said she and a friend, Lori Kennedy, saw the same lights at the same time. I noticed them first and told Lori to look, and she also saw them. They kind of diminished. Then we spotted them to the left of us, east of Richford. We had the scanner on and heard the police chief tell somebody about it, she said. As soon as he mentioned it, that's when they blinked right out. Miss Gendron said she called Combs and told him what I saw, and it was exactly what he saw. Both said the lights made no noise. Absolutely no sound, not one little bit, the chief said. Combs said his brother Carlton and a hunting companion, Elton Dunnican, saw similar lights Thursday night at 7:30. He said the pair reported that when they looked at the lights through their rifle scopes, they appeared red, but when they watched with the naked eye, they were orange. There was other people that saw them up on the Berkshire Road, Combs said. Another sighting was reported to the Free Press by a man who did not want to be identified. He said the lights were like nothing I ever saw before. At Bakersfield, UFO report being probed. From the Daily Messenger, November 12, 1981. We both got out of the car and walked towards it. They were about 200 yards away from us and hovered about 200 yards off the ground, said Joseph Koflis of his unidentified flying object sighting Thursday night on Town Road 20 near the George Sears residence. I was driving my son James, age 16, to a friend's house when we saw these two lights in the sky to our left. They followed us a ways, said Koflis, and turned in a manner which placed them directly in front of us about 500 yards away in the western sky. Koflis said he was able to make out two objects as they hovered over one another. One would turn its lights on, then the other off, said Koflis, who operates Black Bart's barber shop in St. Albans. The light would light up the field around us, he said. By this point, Koflis said he had stopped his automobile, and after the objects started to approach his car, they stopped at a point about 200 yards away and 200 yards above the ground. It was at this point Koflis said he and his son exited their car and started walking towards the two objects. They both took off, making a hard grinding noise. It didn't sound like a jet or anything, but machines working hard, said Koflis, who said the UFOs made no noise until that point. Koflis said when the two UFOs left the area, they headed in a northeasterly direction, and each had 7 lights on their underside, which came on. In the moonlight, Koflis said he was able to see one of the UFOs clearly. Koflis sketched one of the UFOs, which accompanies this article. WCAX-TV weatherman Stuart Hall said today someone from Bakersfield reported seeing strange lights in Bakersfield Tuesday night to the Vermont Air National Guard. Koflis said after Hall mentioned this on his weather program Wednesday evening, he decided to tell of his sightings. I thought people would believe I was crazy, but after I heard someone else in Bakersfield saw some strange lights Tuesday night, I decided to tell people what I saw. Hall said Vermont Air National Guard officials in Burlington told him they had nothing airborne that evening, which might have been mistaken for a UFO by Koflis. I'm going to check with officials at Plattsburgh Air Force Base today to see if they can shed some light on what Kolflis says he saw, said Hall. It wasn't an airplane, said Kolflis. I know what I saw. I'm not crazy. Kolflis called the UFO hotline in Washington State, and they are sending him a form so he can make his statement to that organization, which records reported UFO sightings. They said it was one of the better UFO sighting accounts they have heard of, said Kolfis of the UFO Hotline organization's reaction. Kolfis said his sighting occurred at about 7:50 p.m. Several people report UFO Tuesday. From the Brattleboro Reformer, January 16th, 1982. A strange formation of lights moving slowly in the sky Tuesday night caught the eye of several people in Guilford and Brattleboro, but so far, no explanation for the observations has been found. John and Callista Christensen of Guilford noticed the lights about 6 or 6:15 p.m. on Tuesday. Christensen, who is a lawyer in Brattleboro, described what he saw as an object with a double set of red lights in a rounded line with another red light following at quite a distance behind. Behind that light was another pulsing white light. The unidentified flying object flew from the south to the north and took about 4 or 5 minutes to pass over the crest of the hill, he said. His wife, a librarian at the West Brattleboro Library at Academy School, told him she heard a humming sound coming from the object. Linda and Everett Masters, who live a short distance away from the Christensens on the Good Enough Road in Brattleboro, also saw the strange sight at about the same time. Mrs. Masters, who was teaching at Academy School on Wednesday, learned of the Christensen sighting when Mrs. Christensen spoke of it to several teachers. My husband and daughter were coming home in the car when they saw it, Mrs. Masters said. They ran in the house and yelled, "Come out, come out." Everett Masters, who is the principal of the Pioneer Valley Regional High School in Northfield, Massachusetts, gave this description of the UFO. It was a row of flashing red lights approaching from the south. It looked strange, he said. There were 4 flashing lights in a row, all in a line with each other. Then there was a 5th light behind it. The Masters' 2 children, who also saw the object, said they also heard a humming sound. Mrs. Masters said the UFO looked like an upside-down and rounded V with flashing lights. Another light was further behind, and there were 3 lights in front, she said. It looked to be very low in the sky, Mrs. Masters said. It moved slowly, but it was hard to judge. Her husband added that it was a beautiful, clear, cold night. I guess that is what made me take a second look, Masters said. What was the UFO? Officials can only guess. Donald Saunders of the Federal Aviation Administration in Springfield said Wednesday that no reports of a UFO had come into his office. Perhaps it was a military refueling operation, he said. They can have an odd appearance and sometimes will refuel as many as 3 planes at a time, Saunders said. The FAA official suggested calling to the watch desk controller of the Boston Air Route Traffic Control Center in Nashua, New Hampshire. The controller in Nashua, however, said they had nothing in their logs to show a flight over southeastern Vermont at that time. An official spokesman of Pease Air Force Base in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, said they had no flights in the area at that time. Neither did Westover Air Force Base in Chicopee, Massachusetts, nor Plattsburgh Air Force Base in New York, according to Air Force officials. Several of the officers suggested that the lights could have been an evacuation helicopter, but could not account for the lack of sound. Was there a little green guy looking out the window? The officer at the Plattsburgh base asked. One man took the question quite seriously. He is Ray Fowler, who is the Director of Investigations for a private national organization which consists of 2 groups called the Unidentified Flying Objects Network and the Center for UFO Studies. If there were lights from a classified military mission, the military might not acknowledge them, Fowler said. Numerous sightings are reported to his organization every year, and each one is investigated, he said. Often they have a simple explanation. The UFO group is looking for actual close encounters, Fowler said. That is where the person is within 500 feet or so of the object, or where the object is low to the ground, and there is a backdrop behind it, Fowler said. The sightings of a series of lights in the air, even if it were an alien aircraft, well, there is not much you can do. Police chief receives reports of UFOs all over the place. From the Free Press, March 7, 1982. Police Chief Homer Combs said Saturday he has received several reports of UFO sightings in the past few weeks. Not a day goes by that someone doesn't tell me they've spotted these strange objects, and they are all similar in appearance, Combs said. Saturday, about 6 p.m., Combs received a report from 2 East Richford women who said they heard a loud noise overhead, and when they went outside, spotted an object shaped like something like a butterfly moving rapidly overhead at treetop level. The object then turned around and then came back and was covered with red lights, according to the reports. The same object was seen and heard by a man chopping wood in Richford at the same time, Combs said. The police chief said the description was similar to that of objects he has seen in the sky for the past month. They're all over the place, he said. Friday, the police chief talked with a woman who claimed 2 of the objects followed her car for several miles between Fairfield and St. Albans around noon. The woman described the objects as being shaped like swastikas and said they looked like they were made of cast iron. Another sighting was reported to police and newspapers last week in Fairfield. My theory is that these objects are seen in certain areas like Richford and Fairfield because of some type of refueling energy they get from the ground. We don't know what type of technology they have, Combs said. Combs said he has received a call from an investigator dealing with UFO research asking for an interview. I have tried to find out what this is all about, Combs said, but the only answer I have been able to get from officials is that these things are around, and if they were going to do any harm, they would have by now. However, it would be nice to know what these things are since they are being seen so often. Bakersfield UFO sightings confirmed by reporter. From the County Courier, February 25, 1982. During this past fall and winter, there have been numerous sightings of UFOs in the Franklin County area, one of which reached national prominence when Richford Police Chief Homer Combs was featured in an article in the National Enquirer several weeks back. More recently, an article by St. Albans Messenger General Manager Gary Rakowski detailed the experience of Bakersfield resident Auber Brogdon, who had a close encounter of the third time right in the village. This reporter had what can only be termed a bizarre experience the night of February 8th at his home in Bakersfield. I went outside to get some wood about 11 p.m. when I noticed a bright orange star in the western sky, but there should not have been a star of that color or intensity in that location. I went inside and fetched my binoculars, only to find that when I stepped back out on the porch, it was gone. Not really though, because it was now overhead, probably 1,000 to 2,000 feet above me, close enough to get a clear view of a vast array of lights under the wings of what was now clearly an aircraft of huge dimensions. With the binoculars, the view was even sharper. I have seen hundreds of planes flying over from Plattsburgh to points east, but none of them came close to resembling this behemoth in size, shape, or lighting. The lights of this craft were in series of blues, purples, and oranges. The craft seemed to hover for a moment and then disappeared over a ridge with astonishing speed. The vehicle did emit a sound, but one that seemed inconsistent with any plane I've ever seen. It emitted a muffled noise not unlike that of a B-52 flying at a much higher altitude. Following the sighting, I called the state police to report it. The dispatcher merely thanked me for the call, apparently taking down no details. A few days later, I was visiting one of my neighbors. I told them of my experience. They matter-of-factly informed me that a craft of that description has been a regular visitor over their farm, just to the west of me, for several years. I can't say exactly what it was that I saw, but whatever it was, it certainly wasn't a cloud, the northern lights, or a night training flight out of Plattsburgh. It's nice to know we're not alone. Or is it? Local UFO sightings routine. From the Windsor Chronicle, April 29, 1982. Windsor's recent rash of reports of flashing lights in the night skies has become a minor international event. Tuesday afternoon, the Chronicle received a telephone call from a professor of psychology at McGill University in Montreal who is compiling a file of such reports. Don Dondry described himself as a psychologist who takes UFO sightings very seriously. He said that he had heard about the Windsor sightings from his sister who lives in Shoreham, which is on the west side of Vermont. Upon hearing the description of what several Windsorites reported seeing, Dondry said that the local sightings were quite consistent with other reports which have been documented over the last 20 to 25 years. He accurately noted that inquiries to government agencies received no satisfactory answers and predicted that the mysterious lights might disappear from the area for some time, only to reappear in a year or two. When the Chronicle spokesman expressed mild disappointment over the commonness of the local lights, Dondry laughed and said, "You've got a very good routine UFO report." The Canadian investigator said that he would be interested in any further UFO reports from this area. Vermont's UFO invasion. From the Vermonter Free Press, April 4th, 1982. On a recent frosty March day, Cedric Morse could not help waking up around 4:30 a.m. Although he has been retired since January, Morse has rooster-like instincts from a lifetime of working the same East Richford mountain farm where he was born and raised. He invariably rises and shines before the sun. On this particular morning, however, Morse found that he was not the only thing shining in the pre-dawn gloom of West J Road. As Morse looked down the hill, he saw 3 stationary lights, spaced 3 or 4 feet apart, about 200 yards from the house. Although they did not cast beams like headlights and seemed unusually bright, Morse assumed the lights belonged to automobiles. Thinking it odd for anyone else to be up and about in such a secluded area at such an extraordinary hour, Morse jumped in his car to check out the situation. The spot where he had seen the lights was just beyond a slight ridge in the road, but when he reached the ridge, there was nothing in sight. What bugs me is that there were no tracks anywhere except mine, Morse reflected with a bemused smile. There was an icy shale over everything that morning, but my tracks were the only ones to be seen. Did such an eerie early morning experience make him a sudden believer in the existence of unidentified flying objects? After all, he is not alone in the claims of UFO sightings. There has been a flurry of sightings in Richford and other towns around Vermont. I've believed in them for almost 20 years, Morse declared emphatically, but they told us not to say anything about it. They? Morse recalled the day, September 26, 1962, that he and his wife Doris got an excited phone call from their neighbors, Phyllis and Robert Waterhouse, reporting that something awfully strange was hovering over their milk shed. It was late afternoon, some time after 5. The Morrises drove the short distance down the road to the Waterhouse farm, looked up, and there were 2 big, rounded, metallic, dome-like objects in the sky. Morse said the objects were moving east to west. Moments later, another pair was spotted coming out of the south in a northeasterly direction. They looked like shallow oatmeal dishes, Morse said, bottom side up. The Morrises walked over to where the Waterhouses were standing in front of their gray barn and, with assorted young children gawking upward, stood and watched the UFOs for several minutes. Phyllis Waterhouse remembers the sighting this way. My son Mark, who was 4 or 5 years old then, was out playing in the barnyard and he saw this object hovering. He hollered for me and then I called my husband, who was inside the barn. What I saw was a dull gray thing, shaped like a football. It just kind of hung there over the corner of the milk house, then moved silently away at an awful speed, but the whole time there was no noise. Her husband Robert saw the object, which by that time seemed about 2,000 feet away, hovering over our meadow. He thinks he saw a little vapor coming from it as it moved out. It moved with a speed you wouldn't believe, but no sound. While the Morrises tried to chase the UFOs along the mountain road, somebody thought to call the U.S. Border Patrol's Richford office. By the time an officer arrived, the objects were gone. A short time later, the Morrises and the Waterhouses were interviewed by someone they identified as a government investigator, although no one bothered to ask which branch of government the investigator represented. He told us not to say anything to anyone, Morris said, that it would stir up a panic. We had young kids in school then, Doris Morse said, but we were afraid they'd get teased, so at the time, we didn't care to talk about these things either. That reluctance never prevented the Morrises from feeling sure they had had a close encounter, in the days before the term was a movie title or a household word. They can't make you believe you didn't see what you saw in broad daylight, Morse insisted. The sheer numbers of Vermonters who are seeing what they see these days is a bit astounding. In both the Richford and Windsor areas in particular, dozens of citizens have witnessed strange lights and/or objects in the skies for several weeks now, bolstering more sporadic reports of encounters close and distant over the years. The National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, a clearinghouse for information on sightings since 1973, confirmed that the current rush of UFOs over Yankee territory is unrivaled. Based on information we are getting, said Center Director Robert Gribble, it's very quiet around the country now, except the Vermont-New Hampshire area. Those sightings are occurring predominantly in Richford and Windsor, and curiously, a great number of the reports are coming from police and firemen. Why a policeman sees these things, suggested Richford Police Chief Homer Combs, now a veteran UFO witness, is because we're always looking for the unusual. This is the job of a policeman. You take less notice of ordinary things. In November, Combs, as well as others in town, saw 2 huge, real big, orange-colored lights moving across the same Jay Peak Valley that is overlooked by the Morse property. Combs was patrolling Richford's Golf Course Road at the time, approximately 7:30 p.m., and had an unobstructed view of the entire Richford-East Richford area. In early March, a St. Albans nurse, who wishes to remain anonymous, was visiting her mother in East Richford. At dusk, they went out on the porch to investigate the cause of a loud roar over the house. It was black like cast iron, the size of a normal plane, but with a bug-shaped body, flying at treetop level. It had wings that pointed upward and many blinking red lights all over the wings and bottom, and was heading toward the town of East Richford. Many people who spot UFOs are normally publicly shy, but Combs said that, during the early part of March, it seemed as if he was getting almost daily reports from townspeople. They're all over the place, he claimed. More than 100 miles southeast of Richford, the town of Windsor, on the Connecticut River, has been busy with UFOs this winter. Police Sergeant Richard Poland, Officers William Hines, Dave LaPlante, and Ronald Walker, Fire Chief Bruce Stearns, firefighters Raymond Seeley, Ralph Burnham, and Dave Kibling are among the growing legions of Windsor County people who have seen inexplicable things in the starry skies of southern Vermont. A year ago, 2 women working at Vermont Public Radio, Linda Kingsbury and Lucy Slothauer had an early evening experience with something flashing yellow, blue, red, and white lights about 3,000 feet in the air directly over the supermarket they had just left in the center of Windsor. But not until the 1982 season have the generally triangular-shaped objects begun making frequent appearances there. It started February 2nd with Poland, a 14-year veteran of the town's police force. Poland sighted what he thought was a UFO from his hilltop house about 6 p.m. and called the department to tell fellow officers to gaze heavenward. By the time he reached the center of town, Poland observed that there wasn't one. There were two of these things, not even 1,000 feet in the air. As the police watched from a parking lot, Stearns and some of his men observed the objects as they stood in front of the fire station. Both groups report they saw red and blue lights, seemingly in a triangular pattern when viewed through their high-powered binoculars, moving southeast, then suddenly turning and speeding off toward Mount Ascutney, just southwest of the town center. There was no noise. Just then, two jets with flashing lights and much noise came over Windsor from the northwest, apparently in pursuit of the objects. As the planes got closer to the UFOs, Stearns and Poland recalled the lights on the UFOs disappeared. They just vanished, Poland claimed. Calls by a reporter to virtually every Air Force base and Air National Guard outpost in New England produced no account of any military planes intercepting UFOs near Windsor that night. 2 weeks ago, there was another sighting. March 22nd, firefighters Burnham and Kibling, along with Police Sergeant Gordon Gillen, looked up about 11:30 p.m. to see red, blue, green, and white lights in a triangular pattern. They watched the object hovering on the western horizon from the parking lot of the Grand Union supermarket, which provides a comprehensive vista of eastern and western skylines. When Gillen flashed the blue lights of his police car, the UFO's lights became brighter, according to Burnham, who then flashed the red lights of his fire department vehicle. The UFO's lights got brighter again, he said incredulously. It seemed to be answering us. An attempt at communication with a UFO was less successful for John and Sue Pritt a few years ago. The Ennisburg Falls residents were driving home late one night when they saw some unusual lights at about treetop level that seemed to be following their car. Suspecting it was a small airplane in trouble, the Pritts stopped the car. The object stopped directly in front of and over them. In the belief that it was actually a helicopter, John, an electrical engineer and ham radio operator, began blinking the car headlights in Morse code, spelling out, "Who are you?" Suddenly, there was a loud roar, remembered Sue Pritt, and the thing zipped out of sight. Another highway encounter took place about a year ago on US 7. John and Denise LaCroix were heading back to Burlington about 10 p.m. on a Sunday when they saw lights kind of hopping around strangely off to their right. They could not see much, but moments later, a large, domed object appeared directly over the road. The LaCroix both described it as being as big as an airplane. It had square windows or something all around the bottom, Mrs. LaCroix said, and one larger window in the center. There was a bright white light that seemed to be flashing in sequence from window to window all around the bottom, and one steady white light coming from the central window. The craft hovered over the road at treetop level, no more than a football field's length from the LaCroix car. Even with the windows rolled down, the couple could hear no noise from the UFO, even when, a minute or two later, it sped away with a velocity that astounded them. A Vermont transit bus had been traveling the same road just in front of them. When this thing appeared, LaCroix said, the bus brake lights came on. We had to step on our brakes. We followed the bus into town and ran over to the driver. I started to say, "Excuse me, but just past Virginess," and he cut me off. "Yeah, I know what you mean. I saw it too." The driver then described the same objects the LaCroix had seen. He told us that at first he thought it was a plane until he noticed the lights chasing each other at the bottom, Mrs. LaCroix said. He said he didn't want to mention it to anyone to protect his reputation, but advised us to call the airport to find out if they had anything flying in the vicinity of Virgin Est that night. They didn't. The LaCroix cannot remember the exact date or the bus driver's name. A Vermont transit spokesman said that, without a date, the company could not pinpoint which driver had that route. The bus driver may have feared for his reputation, but Paul Hodes, a New Hampshire Assistant Attorney General of the Criminal Division, does not. The way Hodes tells it, he was driving on Interstate 90 near the Norwich exit in late January when he spied a vaguely triangular-shaped object with red and white lights on the eastern horizon. Hodes said he pulled his car over to the side of the road and opened his windows, hoping to hear what a UFO sounds like. He heard only silence. The whole affair seemed to be moving north at a stately pace, he said, of his not-so-close encounter. Much the same thing occurred several weeks later on the same road. Al Semple, a foreman with the New England Power Company of New Hampshire, was driving near Windsor February 19th when he said he saw two sets of lights on the eastern horizon. He and his two-man crew stopped and watched. It was an overcast night, and the cloud ceiling was about 1,500 feet, Semple said. The intensity of the lights kept changing, and then one object, which through binoculars appeared to have windows, proceeded southwest and the other northeast. When Semple started to turn on the utility truck's spotlight, one of his crew members blurted, "Put that out, they might see us." So Semple did not try to signal the strange craft. "I was thinking friendly thoughts, I'll tell you," Semple recalled, laughing. Semple has since heard several reports of sightings by other power company personnel over power stations or high power lines in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. His theory is that the Windsor UFOs were not really over Vermont, but rather just across the river where his company maintains a 115,000 kV line. One of the most recent series of UFO reports taking place on the same night that Windsor police and firefighters were entertaining possible intergalactic visitors is somewhat of a departure from the rest. In 5 Vermont towns, families called state police just after 9 p.m. to say they had seen something flying through the air and possibly crashing to Earth nearby. Victor and Rita Sauls said they and their son Douglas were sitting at the dinner table in their Randolph Center home when a bright greenish-yellow light streaked across their line of vision as they looked out. As the family watched in amazement, the object swooped down from above treetop level and seemed to crash by the town's water tower in the center of town, about a mile from the Sauls' house. There was no noise that we could hear, and suddenly we saw no more light, Sauls said. It burned out or whatever. When state police troopers checked the spot where the Sauls believed the object had landed, there was no evidence of anything unusual, according to Bethel dispatcher Phil Colby. About the same time, Pamela and Deborah Carrier and their brother Rick were driving into South Royalton on Vermont 14 when a big, greenish, very bright round light with a yellowish tail came into view, moving northeast, according to Rick Carrier. It appeared to crash behind Happy Hollow Hill, but when the young people drove around the hill to investigate, they found nothing untoward. Nancy Hunt of West Braintree was driving home along Thresher Road around 9 p.m. She said she witnessed a green, basketball-shaped light cruising at a 20-degree angle with the Earth. It, too, seemed to hit ground in the nearby woods. Priscilla Oakland tells a similar story. She said she was sitting in a living room chair in her home in Bernard, looking out the window. Suddenly, a greenish-white light on what appeared to be an oblong object whizzed past her line of vision, moving due north, parallel with the ground, at slightly higher than treetop level. It was going right over our hayfield, Mrs. Oakland said. I jumped out of my chair. It seemed to be making a straight line for the Randolph Center water tower, which we can see from Bernard, 20 miles away on a clear day. Although Braintree, Bernard, Royalton, and Randolph are within easy commuting distance for any meteor, what gives this mass encounter a Twilight Zone edge is the 5th report. I've never seen anything like it in my life, swore Lorraine Alexander of Vernon, about 85 miles southeast of Randolph. I saw it fly by my window, a great big red ball of fire. It was too big to be a falling star. It was moving northwest over the atomic plant, Vermont Yankee, and I expected to see a big crash, but nothing else happened. Can people in 5 towns, one at least 85 miles from the others, have each seen the same thing appearing to crash almost in their backyards? Can flying triangles participate in a light show with police and firemen? Can Vermont transit buses meet up with gigantic UFOs on major highways? Can East Richford farm folk ever learn why their secluded mountain acres seem to attract oatmeal bowl visitations? Are people of the Green Mountain State undergoing some sort of mass hallucinogenic psychosis? Are they seeing Russian spy ships or secret American military technology? Northern Lights? Southern Comfort? Or are we indeed not alone? Could it be that Vermonters are getting together with extraterrestrial flatlanders, so to speak? In the words of Windsor Police Sergeant Richard Polland, they're there, whatever they are, you figure it out. Windsor's aerial mystery. Lots of witnesses, mighty few answers. From the Sunday Rutland Herald, April 4th, 1982. Strange, bright lights in Windsor's nighttime sky are arousing suspicion and curiosity. Townspeople, as well as police officers and firefighters, have observed the lights, but nobody has been able to give a logical explanation for them. The first sighting was reported in April 1981, and since that date, the police department has received approximately 15 calls regarding the strange phenomena. Police Sergeant Richard W. Polland said that during February and March, there were accelerated numbers of sightings with no apparent explanation. Some people have described the lights as having a triangular formation with the ability to appear and disappear instantly. Some witnesses have heard a low humming sound accompanying the light or lights. Others report hearing no sounds at all. Polland himself had an experience with the lights in February. I was on patrol on the county road when I saw a bright, yellowish light over the town in the vicinity of the Cone Blanchard Machine Company and the Connecticut River, he said. It appeared to be stationary and about 500 to 1,000 feet up, he said, and under a solid cloud layer. I called in to see if any other officers could see it. I was told that Officer David LaPlante was watching it on the fire escape with binoculars. I then saw it move at a moderate rate of speed to the south, and then it disappeared, the sergeant said. Polland reported that he started back to town and was in the vicinity of the Mount Ascutney Hospital when he looked up and noticed the light was right back in the same area. Looking through the binoculars, it appeared to have a triangular shape with 3 edges, and different colored lights, yellow, white, red, and blue. He said it appeared to be a solid object with a dark center. The police sergeant said he and LaPlante met on Main Street to take another look at the light. Polland said that when they were watching the light, a second light appeared. As the light got closer to the first one, it got larger and brighter. For 2 or 3 minutes, we watched the lights, and then they dimmed down and started off at a moderate rate of speed going south. All of a sudden, they turned and went west. It was at that point we saw 2 jet planes coming out of the northwest below the cloud cover, and the jets approached these objects. Polland said he could easily distinguish the lights from the jets. The objects just vanished, and we watched the jet planes until they were out of sight, he said. The sergeant said that he resumed his duties and was on patrol and returning to the village from the south when he spotted another light. Again, a second light appeared and joined the first, he said. They stayed stationary, and I watched them for about 3 minutes, then one headed west and one headed south. Polland said that there were several calls to the police department from people observing the lights. He said that once the news release about the sightings hit the newspapers, he received 6 or more calls supporting what he had seen. I knew what I had seen, but it was good to know somebody else had seen it too, he said. He questioned how many people have seen the lights but haven't come forward to admit it. Some people called in but won't give their name, he added. I was quizzed by the media and asked if what I saw was the Northern Lights. I know what I saw, and it wasn't the Northern Lights. That I'm sure of, he stated. Windsor Fire Chief W. Bruce Stearns also reported seeing the same lights as Pollen. I was watching the lights moving westward when I heard and saw 2 jets coming from the south, as if they were going to intercept the lights. As the jets got closer, the lights disappeared. Stearns said this sighting was the only one in which he saw 2 lights. The chief reported that he has seen the strange lights 5 or 6 times in the last several months. Asked to describe a shape, Stearns said, I think probably oblong with red, yellow, and green lights on the bottom. I just wish I had a powerful telescope to see it closer, he said. Firefighter Lieutenant Raymond H. Seeley reported that he has seen the lights 4 times in March. Seeley said he has seen the lights on the east side of Mount Ascutney south of Windsor Village and estimated their altitude at 2,000 feet. One light changes colors, white, red, green, greenish blue, and it moves up to the right, down, left, and back to the original spot, he said. I don't believe it's a star or another planet. I think it warrants an investigation. I'd feel more relaxed knowing what it is, he added. The first sighting in April of 1981 was reported by 4 Windsor residents, including Linda Kingsbury. Kingsbury said she was crossing the P&C food store parking lot when she saw 2 lights like stars coming from the southeast. She said that as the lights got closer and brighter, an object took shape, first a triangle, then a boomerang. Kingsbury described the craft as just huge and about the size of a football field with colored lights, yellow, blue, red, and white. The bottom was metal-like and had corridors of lights that went from side to side. She estimated it to be at an elevation of 3,000 feet. I watched it for about 13 minutes. It moved in extremely slow motion with a heavy droning sound. Reports have come from elsewhere in the area. Michael A. and Turret F. Sabia and their son Christian also told of seeing strange lights in February from their Bible Hill home in West Windsor. Michael Sabia described the lights as resembling a 747 coming in for a landing or 3 fighter planes flying in close formation. But he noted it was lower than a plane ordinarily flies. The Sabias said the 3 red lights moved from the east to the west, turned left, and then exited in a southerly direction towards Springfield. They said the lights moved in slow motion with no apparent sound. Michael Sabia said a few minutes later, as they were driving west on Jewett Road, they encountered the lights again. Everything was the same. I questioned the fact that if it could be 2 planes in the same night. The Sabias stopped the car in the road, shut off the engine and lights, and just watched until another car came down the road. Turret Sabia said she saw clusters of white, yellowish lights around the red lights. It leaves you with a funny feeling. You could be hypnotized looking at these. A spokesman for Phenomena Research, a UFO reporting center in Seattle, said his agency has received several calls from Windsor area residents reporting lights at high altitudes, but has no official reports. The spokesman said his firm has had several inquiries from local news and police agencies. He said to research a sighting, the agency would need a close encounter incident where the object would appear at 500 feet or closer. He said a close encounter incident would involve objects landing close to cars or hovering over houses, or a report of wingless vehicles. Sightings of triangular objects is very common and has been reported hundreds of times, he said. Polland has encouraged anyone witnessing a sighting to report it to Phenomena Research. I personally feel that information should be put out about these objects, Polland said. If the government is working on something, fine, tell the people. If it's something else, tell the people what it is. This many people seeing similar objects, as far as I'm concerned, is lending credibility to the fact that we're watching some sort of a ship, whether it be military or otherwise. The last sighting in Windsor was on March 28th. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments below what state you'd like to see me cover next. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment, as it really helps my channel out, and I really appreciate it. If you want to check out more of my paranormal videos, you can click the pop-up on the top right corner for a full playlist. And if you have your own paranormal encounters, UFO sightings, or any other kind of strange story, you can either share it in the comments, post on my subreddit, r/ihaveaspookystory, or send it to my story submission email, pinkpossiblystories@gmail.com. Maybe your story will be in a future video. Good night, sleep tight, and don't let the shadows bite.